The funeral bells began ringing before the sun finished setting. Their slow, mournful toll rolled across the mountains, through ancient forests, and into every village under the Alpha King's protection. Wolves stopped mid-step. Merchants bowed their heads. Mothers pulled frightened pups into their arms. The impossible had happened. The Alpha King was dead. Inside the royal death chamber, silence weighed heavier than grief. Hundreds of candles flickered against walls, carved with enormous stone wolves, the faces of every Alpha King who had ruled before him. For 3 centuries, those silent guardians had watched kings crowned, kings victorious, and kings buried. Tonight they watched another. King Kale lay motionless on a bed of polished black stone, dressed in ceremonial white robes embroidered with silver thread. His broad shoulders, once strong enough to lead armies, no longer rose with breath. His hands rested peacefully across his chest. He looked like he'd merely fallen asleep. The royal healer stepped forward one final time, her trembling fingers pressed gently to his neck. Nothing. She closed her eyes, prayed, counted to 10, pressed harder. Still nothing. A tear slipped down her wrinkled cheek before she finally lowered her hand. His Majesty, her voice broke, has returned to the moon goddess. The words shattered the room. The king's beta staggered back before collapsing to one knee, fists striking the stone floor hard enough to split skin. No! His voice came out broken. Not him! The elders lowered their heads. Even the palace guards, warriors who had faced death without fear, struggled to keep their composure. Outside, another funeral bell rang, then another. Soon the entire kingdom would know their king was gone, and before dawn, someone else would claim his throne. Hidden among the servants pressed against the far wall was a young woman no one bothered to notice. Her name was Mira, or at least it had been, before everyone stopped using it. To the palace guards, she was the rejected Omega. To the servants, the girl the king threw away. To the nobles, she was invisible. She should never have been allowed inside the royal death chamber. She wasn't there because she was invited. She'd come to scrub the marble floors before the funeral preparations began. No one had bothered to ask her to leave. After all, who notices the maid? She kept her eyes lowered, gripping the handle of her wooden bucket until her fingers ached. She'd promised herself 3 years ago that she would never cry for him again. Not after what he'd done, not after the day he stood before the entire royal court, looked into her eyes, and destroyed her life with 8 simple words. I reject you as my fated mate. She could still hear the laughter that followed, still remember the whispers. An Omega, dreaming she could become queen. How pathetic. For 3 years she'd buried that memory beneath endless work. Before sunrise, she scrubbed palace floors. After sunset, she washed dishes until her hands bled. She slept in a room barely large enough for a narrow cot and a cracked wooden chair. Every day she reminded herself that the Alpha King had chosen a life without her. So why did it feel like something inside her had just died with him? She hated herself for caring. She hated herself even more because she still loved him. The royal healer carefully folded the king's hands across his chest. Prepare the body. Servants moved at once. White funeral clothes, silver incense, sacred oils. Everything happened with quiet precision. Everything, except Mira. Without thinking, she took a single step forward, then another. The beta noticed. His red eyes narrowed. What are you doing? She didn't answer. She kept walking. Gasps spread across the room. A rejected Omega approaching the king's body? Had grief driven her insane? 2 guards moved to intercept her. She slipped between them before either realized what she intended. Then, she reached out. Her fingers wrapped around the king's cold hand. Ice. His skin felt like winter itself. Tears blurred her vision. You're lying, she whispered. No one understood who she was speaking to. Not the healer, not the beta, not even the moon goddess herself. He's still here. The beta exploded. "Get your filthy hands off my king." He lunged toward her. Before he reached her, something happened. A single finger moved. Barely. Just enough to brush against Mira's thumb. She froze. Her breath caught. No. She had imagined it. Hadn't she? The room remained silent. No one reacted. The beta was glaring at her. The elders looked disgusted. The healer looked heartbroken. No one had seen it. Only her. Slowly, very slowly, she looked back down. His hand was perfectly still again. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Has grief finally driven her mad? Or had the dead just reached for her? She said nothing. If she spoke now, they would laugh. If she insisted, they would drag her away. Instead, she tightened her grip ever so slightly, waiting, praying, begging. Move again. Please, move again. Nothing. The beta finally grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the bed. You've disgraced him enough. She didn't fight back, but as the guards forced her toward the chamber doors, she caught something that no one else could. The faintest trace of his scent. Not the scent of death, not decay, not cold stone. Life. Faint, weak, almost gone, but alive. Mira's entire body went rigid. The healer believed he was dead. The beta believed he was dead. The entire kingdom believed he was dead. They were all wrong. And if she did nothing, before sunrise, they would bury the only man who still had a heartbeat left to steal. She looked once more at the king's motionless body, then at the guards, then at the heavy stone doors leading into the dark palace corridors. A decision settled inside her. Quiet, terrifying, irreversible. Tonight, she would commit the greatest crime in the history of the kingdom. She would steal the Alpha King's body. The palace bells were still ringing when Mira disappeared into the night. The Alpha King's body lay across an old wooden cart, hidden beneath sacks of firewood. Every bump along the frozen road made her heart stop, terrified someone would hear the sound of armor beneath the burial cloth. She had stolen a king. If they caught her before sunrise, she would never see another sunrise again. The winter wind howled through the trees, like wolves mourning their fallen alpha. She didn't stop. Not when snow began to fall. Not when her hands bled from gripping the cart. Not even when exhaustion blurred the path before her eyes. She had only one destination. The Moon Temple. It stood forgotten at the edge of the kingdom, where the mountains swallowed the forest, and no wolf dared wander after dark. Once, every Alpha King had journeyed there before his coronation to receive the Moon Goddess's blessing. Now it was nothing but broken pillars, cracked statues, and silence. Or so everyone believed. The temple emerged through the snowfall like the skeleton of a forgotten giant. Its marble staircase was split by roots that had grown through the stone over decades. The silver doors had long since rotted away. Moonlight poured through the ruined roof, illuminating an ancient altar carved from a single block of white stone. Mira dragged the king's body inside. Every muscle screamed. Her knees buckled the moment she lowered him onto the altar. "I'm here," she whispered between ragged breaths. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I couldn't leave you." Silence answered. The king didn't move. His skin was colder now, far colder. Fear wrapped itself around her heart. Had she imagined everything? The finger, the scent, the feeling that he wasn't truly gone. What if grief had driven her mad? She rested trembling fingers against his neck. Nothing. Against his chest. Nothing. The temple remained silent. Outside, snow drifted through the broken ceiling. Inside, hope slowly began to die. "You brought him to the right place." The voice came from the darkness. Mira spun around. An old woman stood between two shattered pillars, wrapped in gray robes, older than memory itself. Her long white hair fell almost to her waist. Her eyes were completely white, blind. Yet she walked across the cracked floor without hesitation, as though the temple itself guided every step. "You?" Mira swallowed. "Who are you?" The old woman smiled faintly. "The last royal healer." Mira frowned. "The royal healer is at the palace. The last true healer. the woman corrected. The others learned medicine. I learned about the moon. She knelt beside the Alpha King's body. One wrinkled hand rested gently over his heart. She closed her eyes. For a long moment, she listened. Not with her ears, with something older. When she finally opened her eyes again, she smiled. He isn't dead. Mira's breath caught. I knew it. No. The old woman shook her head. You hoped for it. Those are different things. The woman motioned for Mira to come closer. Tell me, how did you know? Mira hesitated. I felt his finger move. The healer nodded. And? I could still smell him. The old woman's expression changed. Not surprising. Recognition. Of course. She looked down at the unconscious king. He chose well. What? Nothing. She gently lifted the king's hand. You smelled life because your bond never stopped speaking. Mira stared. My bond? You were his mate. He rejected me. The old healer looked almost amused. No. He said the words. He never broke the bond. The temple seemed to grow colder. Mira took an unsteady step backward. I don't understand. You will. The old healer's voice became quieter. Do you know why Alpha Kings are feared? Because they're the strongest wolves alive. The old woman smiled. No. They are feared because they cannot truly die from betrayal. Mira frowned. What does that mean? An Alpha King can fall to poison. He can fall to a blade. He can even lose every heartbeat. But if betrayal is the weapon that kills him, she rested her hand over his chest once more. His soul refuses to cross into the moon goddess's embrace. It waits. It listens. It searches for the one voice it still belongs to. Mira's lips parted. His mate. The old healer nodded. The bond becomes the bridge. Tears welled in Mira's eyes. But he rejected me. He looked me in the eyes. He told the whole kingdom, I reject you. The old woman sighed. A true rejection is not spoken before a crowd. It is performed beneath the full moon. 3 nights. Blood. Moonfire. Spirit. Only then does the bond break. She looked directly toward Mira's face despite being blind. Did your bond disappear? Mira remembered. Every full moon. Every unexplained ache in her chest. Every moment she sensed him somewhere inside the palace. Every dream. Every heartbeat. Every impossible feeling she had spent 3 years convincing herself wasn't real. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. No, the old woman smiled. Because he never rejected you. He only convinced the kingdom that he did. Why? The word escaped as a whisper. Why would he do something so cruel? The healer's face darkened. Because someone close to him wanted him dead. And anyone carrying the king's bond would have died with him. Mira covered her mouth. He hid you. He let the kingdom despise you. He let you hate him. So no one would ever realize who you truly were. The truth struck harder than any blade. For 3 years, she had cursed the only man who had sacrificed everything to keep her alive. The old healer slowly stood. There is still hope. Mira looked up immediately. What do I do? You sing. She blinked. What? The oldest alpha bond was never awakened by power. It answered love. The healer pointed toward the cracked ceiling, where moonlight poured onto the altar. Your grandmother sang to you. Mira froze. How do you know that? I trained your grandmother. Silence filled the temple. The lullaby she taught you was never meant for children. It is the first song, the song the moon goddess gave to the first alpha queen. Mira's hands trembled. I haven't sung it in years. You only need to remember it with your heart. The old healer quietly stepped away. The rest is between the two of you. She disappeared into the shadows. Mira was alone once more. She looked at the Alpha King's peaceful face. 3 years of pain. 3 years of misunderstanding. 3 years of believing she had never mattered to him. All because he chose her life over her love. She brushed a lock of dark hair away from his forehead. I'm sorry, she whispered, for hating you. Her voice cracked. Then, slowly, she began to sing. The melody came hesitantly at first. A forgotten lullaby. Soft, ancient, beautiful. The ruined temple seemed to awaken. The wind fell silent. Snow stopped drifting through the broken roof. Even the candle she had lit burned without flickering. The song echoed between the ancient pillars, once sung for kings, now sung for one soul fighting its way home. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Still, she kept singing. Her voice grew stronger, warmer, filled with every tear she had buried for 3 long years. Then, the king's fingers twitched. Mira stopped. The movement vanished. No. She remembered the healer's words. Don't stop. She closed her eyes and sang again. Louder this time, the melody filled every corner of the ruined temple. Beneath her trembling palm, something answered. Thump. One heartbeat, strong enough to make her gasp. Then another. Thump. The king's chest rose in the smallest breath. His lips parted. A faint whisper escaped. Mira. Before she could answer, his entire body suddenly arched. A wave of dark silver energy exploded from him, racing through the temple like a living storm. The candles went out, the altar cracked, the mountain itself trembled, and deep beneath the ruined temple, something ancient opened its eyes. The mountain trembled. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling as ancient runes carved into the temple floor began to glow with pale silver light. Mira stumbled backward. The king's body lay motionless on the altar, yet the air around him pulsed with invisible power, rising and falling like the breath of a sleeping giant. His heartbeat had returned, weak, unsteady, but unmistakably alive. She rushed back to his side. Kale. His name escaped her lips before she could stop it. For 3 years, she had refused to speak it aloud. Now it felt like a prayer. His eyelashes fluttered. His lips parted, as though trying to speak. Only one broken whisper escaped. Forgive. Then silence reclaimed him. His chest became still once more. The heartbeat faded until she could barely feel it beneath her trembling palm. Tears burned her eyes. No, please, don't leave again. You are asking the wrong question. The old healer's voice echoed softly through the temple. Mira looked up. When someone gives up everything to protect another, the question is never whether he loved you. She slowly approached the altar. The real question is what frightened him enough to lose you. The words settled over Mira like winter snow. For the first time, she stopped asking why he had rejected her. Instead, she asked herself what kind of danger could force a king to destroy the only woman he loved. The old healer reached beneath the king's cloak. Hidden against his chest was a thin leather cord. Around it hung half of a silver moon pendant. The old woman carefully lifted it into the light. Mira gasped. Her own hand instinctively reached beneath her dress. Hidden there, for 3 years, she wore the other half. The pieces fit together perfectly. She stared at them in disbelief. He gave this to me, the night before. The memory crashed over her. Moonlight. The palace gardens. Kale standing beneath the ancient oak, where they had first met. His face was unusually pale. His eyes filled with a sadness she hadn't understood. He had placed the broken pendant into her hand. Never lose this. She laughed softly. It's only half. The other half stays with me. Then we're both carrying something unfinished. His smile had been heartbreaking. If tomorrow changes everything, promise me you'll keep living. She remembered frowning. What are you talking about? He had reached toward her, almost touching her face, almost kissing her. Then he pulled his hand away. There are enemies closer than either of us realized. If anything happens, you must never trust appearances. The next morning, he rejected her before the entire kingdom. She had never seen him again, until he died. A tear slipped down Mira's cheek. He knew. The old healer nodded. He discovered the conspiracy, but it was too late. He had already been surrounded. Who? The old woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the unconscious king. When a king cannot trust his own shadow, where would you hide the woman you love? Understanding slowly dawned. Among servants, the healer smiled sadly. No assassin wastes time hunting a forgotten Omega. They hunt queens. They hunt heirs. They hunt women carrying the king's mark. So he erased yours. He gave the kingdom someone to pity instead of someone to kill. Mira's knees gave way beneath her. 3 years. 3 years of loneliness. 3 years of believing she had never been enough. Every insult, every humiliation, every tear, because he had been trying to keep her alive. He never rejected you. The old healer's voice was firm. He rejected the world's knowledge of you. The bond never broke. It merely disappeared from everyone's eyes. She gently placed Mira's trembling hand over the king's heart. Listen. At first, there was nothing. Then, deep beneath his stillness, another heartbeat answered hers. Not with sound, with feeling. 2 souls, still connected. After all this time, far away. Inside the royal palace, someone smiled. The finance minister quietly closed the treasury ledger. The search? He asked. One of the royal guards bowed. Nothing. We've searched every village, every forest. No sign of the Omega. No sign of the king's body. The minister nodded calmly. Excellent. When the guard disappeared, the smile vanished. He walked to a locked cabinet hidden behind shelves of records. Inside were dozens of ledgers, false accounts, stolen taxes, bribes, payments made in secret over 10 years. Enough corruption to destroy the kingdom. He poured himself a cup of wine. The same dark red wine, the same vintage, the same poison. He stared into it. So, he whispered, you finally died. He lifted the glass. To kings who trusted too easily, he drank. Across the kingdom, the news spread like wildfire. The Alpha King was dead. His body had been stolen. The throne stood empty. Neighboring Alphas needed no further invitation. Within hours, messengers galloped across borders. War drums echoed through distant territories. One rival Alpha smiled as he unfolded the royal announcement. So the lion has fallen. Another sharpened his sword. The kingdom is leaderless. A third ordered 20,000 warriors to march before sunrise. Predators always smelled weakness, and this kingdom was bleeding. Back inside the palace, the beta stood before the empty throne. His fists clenched. His eyes burned red with grief. If whoever stole him thinks I'll stop searching. His voice shook the hall. They don't know me. He turned toward hundreds of assembled warriors. Search every cave, every river, every mountain. If she's alive, bring her back. If anyone stands in your way, they answer to me. Thousands of wolves answered with a deafening roar. The hunt had begun. Back at the Moon Temple, Mira suddenly froze. The old healer had gone completely still. Her blind eyes lifted toward the mountain entrance. They've found us. Mira's heart stopped. What? I can hear them. She heard nothing, only wind. But the healer never doubted herself. Hundreds of wolves. They're climbing the mountain. They'll be here before dawn. Mira looked down at Kale. He still hadn't awakened. He couldn't walk. He couldn't fight. She couldn't carry him again. Outside, the first distant howl echoed through the darkness. Then another. Then dozens more. The hunt had reached the Moon Temple. The words left Mira's lips in a whisper older than kingdoms. The final verse of the moon goddess's prayer drifted through the ruined temple like silver mist, wrapping itself around the sleeping Alpha King. Then, silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind of silence that makes the entire world hold its breath. Mira could no longer feel her hands. Her vision blurred. Every heartbeat she had left had flowed into him. She swayed where she knelt. The old healer reached toward her. No more, she warned. If you give another drop, your soul will cross before he returns. Mira smiled weakly. If that's the price. She placed both trembling hands over his heart. Then let it be mine. She spoke the final ancient word. The temple exploded. A shockwave of silver light burst from the king's body, with enough force to crack the ancient altar beneath him. Stone pillars trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. The old temple groaned. as though it remembered the age when alpha kings were blessed by the moon goddess herself. For one terrifying heartbeat, nothing happened. Mira's body collapsed beside him. Her breathing became shallow. The old healer hurried toward her. "No!" Her voice broke. "Child!" Then, boom! The king's chest surged upward. Air exploded into his lungs. Not a gentle breath, a violent one, like a man dragging himself back from the bottom of the ocean. His eyes snapped open. They no longer glowed ordinary gold. Twin moons burned inside them. The entire temple shook. A deafening roar erupted from his throat. Not the cry of a wolf, but the roar of an alpha king who had conquered death itself. The sound rolled across mountains, across rivers, across forests. Every wolf in the kingdom froze. Warriors riding through the woods yanked their horses to a halt. Children stopped laughing. Hunters lowered their bows. Mothers looked toward the eastern mountains. Even wolves from rival territories lifted their heads. They all felt it. The king's aura, alive, stronger than before. It crashed across the kingdom like a tidal wave. Thousands of wolves instinctively dropped to one knee. Many had no idea why. Their instincts recognized what their minds refused to believe. The Alpha King had returned. Inside the palace, the beta staggered as invisible pressure slammed into his chest. His eyes widened. No! Another pulse struck. More powerful. His wolf whimpered inside him. Only one wolf alive could produce that level of dominance. The king. He turned toward the shattered windows overlooking the distant mountains. He's alive. Across the throne room, every elder suddenly fell silent. Several collapsed onto one knee. Even the palace guards struggled to breathe beneath the overwhelming alpha presence. Only one man remained perfectly still. The finance minister. For the first time since the poisoning, fear appeared on his face. Impossible. He watched the trembling nobles around him. No, he whispered. I watched him die. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. If he's alive, his voice faded. Then he knows. Back at the temple, the king's breathing slowly steadied. His eyes searched wildly, confused, disoriented, until they found her, Mira, collapsed beside the altar. Her skin had become frighteningly pale. Her lips had lost all color. He crawled toward her despite the weakness still tearing through his muscles. Mira, his voice cracked. No answer. He gathered her into his arms. She felt impossibly light, too light, as though pieces of her were already disappearing. What happened? The old healer looked at him with ancient, tired eyes. She gave you everything. He frowned. What do you mean? Every heartbeat you have now, she swallowed, was paid for by hers. His face went white. No, she fed your bond with her own life. The realization struck him harder than the poison ever had. 3 years. For 3 years, she had suffered because of him. For 4 days, she had carried his body through the freezing wilderness. And now, she had traded her own life to bring him back. His hands trembled as he brushed loose strands of hair from her face. I promised, his voice broke, that I would protect you. A single tear slid down his cheek. I failed. Mira stirred weakly. Her eyelids fluttered. She smiled the tiniest smile. Told you, she whispered. You were late. He laughed through tears. The sound broke into another sob. He pressed his forehead against hers. Never again. His voice became steel. I let them believe I rejected you. I let them hate you. I let you suffer alone. His golden eyes burned brighter. But anyone who made you cry, his wolf growled, will answer to me. The air around him exploded again. Not with grief this time, with fury. The king's aura poured from the ruined temple like a living storm. Trees bent. Snow blasted from the mountainsides. Birds fled into the sky. Every wolf within 100 miles felt one command echo inside their souls. Find your king. Across the forests, hundreds of warriors searching for the king's stolen body suddenly changed direction at once. They no longer hunted Mira. They followed the king's aura. Meanwhile, hidden among the trees several miles away, a squad of assassins sent by the finance minister felt it too. Their captain slowly lowered his hood. His face was drained of color. "The king," he whispered, "is alive." Another assassin tightened his grip on his blade. "What do we do?" The captain stared toward the mountains. Then he uttered the one sentence none of them ever expected to say: "Run." Because hunters do not chase an awakened alpha king. They become prey. Far above them, a massive silver wolf appeared on the highest cliff, watching, waiting. Its glowing eyes never left the temple. The old healer slowly lifted her gaze. Her expression changed. "No," she breathed. "It can't be." The king followed her stare. "What is it?" The old woman whispered words that turned the blood cold in everyone's veins. "That," she said, "is the first alpha." The legendary wolf stepped forward. The mountain shook beneath its paws. Its voice echoed across the valley like thunder. The trial has only just begun. Dawn broke over the kingdom, beneath silver skies. For the first time in days, the wolves no longer smelled death in the wind. They smelled their king. The procession back to the palace stretched for miles. Warriors who had spent days hunting Mira now walked ahead of her with lowered heads. No one dared meet her eyes. The woman they had branded a traitor, the woman they had sworn to execute, had carried their king through death itself. The Alpha King refused every horse and every royal carriage offered to him. Instead, he carried Mira in his arms. She protested weakly. "I can walk." He looked down at her, his expression softening. "You carried me when the whole kingdom believed I was dead." His voice was quiet. "Now it's my turn." No one argued. Not the warriors, not the elders, not even the beta. Because every wolf present understood something that words could never fully explain. Their king had returned because of her. The palace gates opened before them. Thousands of wolves crowded the courtyard. Servants, warriors, elders, children, mothers, even those who had mocked Mira for years, stood in stunned silence. She remembered standing in this same courtyard 3 years earlier, broken, rejected, humiliated before the entire kingdom. Today, the king walked through those same gates with her in his arms. No one laughed. Many lowered their eyes in shame. Inside the great hall, the throne still stood draped in black. The funeral banners had not yet been removed. The Alpha King climbed the steps slowly, before setting Mira gently on her feet beside him. Then he faced the court. His golden eyes swept across every noble, every elder, every advisor. Finally, they stopped one man, the finance minister. The man's confident smile disappeared. "My king," he began carefully, "we mourned you." Enough. The single word echoed like thunder. The hall fell silent. "You poisoned my wine." The minister froze. "You stole from this kingdom for 10 years. No answer. You bribed my guards." Silence. "You murdered loyal wolves who discovered your crimes." The minister took one slow step backward. "You have no proof." The king's expression never changed. "I don't need proof." He looked toward the 2 royal guards. "You may speak." The first guard collapsed onto his knees. "We're sorry." The second burst into tears. "He threatened our families. We never wanted you dead." The courtroom erupted. Nobles shouted. Warriors drew swords. The finance minister turned and ran. He never reached the door. The beta moved faster than sight. One punch slammed the traitor onto the marble floor. The king descended from the throne. Each step echoed through the silent hall. He stood over the man who had nearly destroyed an entire kingdom. "You betrayed your king. You betrayed your people. You betrayed the moon goddess herself." The minister shook with terror. "Mercy." The king looked at him without hatred, only disappointment. "You asked none of me." He raised his hand. "Strip him of his title. Seize every stolen coin. Let every village he robbed receive justice. And banish his name from the history of this kingdom forever." The guards dragged the screaming traitor away. Not one wolf pitied him. Justice had finally found its mark. Silence settled over the great hall once more. Then, the king turned toward Mira. The entire kingdom watched. He walked until only a single step separated them. For a long moment, he said nothing. His voice, when it came, was raw with emotion. 3 years ago, I stood in this hall, and I broke your heart. Mira looked down. He gently lifted her chin. I told myself I was protecting you. I believed letting you hate me was better than letting my enemies kill you. A tear slipped down his face. But protection should never have looked like cruelty. The hall remained utterly silent. Every wolf listened. I cannot give you back the years you lost. I cannot erase every insult you endured. I cannot take away the nights you cried because of me. His voice trembled. But before this kingdom, he slowly lowered himself onto one knee. Gasps echoed across the hall. An alpha king, kneeling, not before a goddess, not before another king, before the woman he loved. I'm sorry. No royal decree, no grand speech, just 2 words. And somehow, they carried more weight than any crown. Tears streamed down Mira's face. You really are late, she whispered. A soft laugh spread through the hall. The king smiled through his tears. I know. She reached out. Her fingers brushed his cheek. I forgave you the moment your heart started beating again. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the bond between them felt whole. The royal healer stepped forward, carrying the ancient crown. It glittered beneath the morning light. Every alpha king had worn it. The king accepted it. The court expected him to place it upon his own head. Instead, he turned toward Mira. This crown belonged to rulers. His voice echoed across the chamber. But today, it belongs to the woman who saved a kingdom. He carefully placed the crown upon her head. At that exact moment, the moon, still faint in the daylight sky, shone through the palace windows. Silver light surrounded Mira. A glowing mark appeared at her collarbone. Not placed there by magic, not gifted by fate, earned through sacrifice. The wolves of the kingdom instinctively bowed, not because they were commanded, because their hearts recognized their queen. The beta knelt first, then the elders, then the warriors. Then every servant who had once watched Mira scrub these same floors before sunrise. The king smiled. Rise. He took her hand. My queen. Cheers exploded through the palace. The sound rolled beyond the walls into every village. Church bells rang. The children laughed. Bonfires lit the hillsides once more. The kingdom that had nearly fallen into darkness celebrated until the stars filled the sky. Years later, mothers would tell their pups the story, not of the king who conquered death, but of the rejected Omega who refused to let him die. Because crowns may build kingdoms, but love is what saves them. And every time the palace bells rang beneath a full moon, the wolves remembered one truth above all others. Sometimes the greatest queen is the woman the world once rejected. The Alpha King never forgot the promise he made beneath the ruined temple. He never let Mira walk behind him again. She walked beside him. Always. Forever. The kingdom that once laughed at the rejected Omega would forever remember her by a different name, Queen Mira, the heart of the kingdom. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable Alpha King and werewolf romance stories every week. Now tell me in the comments, if you were Mira, would you have risked your life to save the man who rejected you? Or would you have walked away forever? I read every comment, and your answer might inspire our next story. Until next time, may the moon goddess guide your path.